I'm a guy. I'm 17 years old. I live with my parents and younger siblings. We used to be very close. My birth mom passed away when I was only 6 days old. She developed complications late in her pregnancy and never recovered from the birth. A few weeks later, my dad decided to move out. He couldn't stay in the house where they planned to start their life together. My mom's relatives were left behind. She had parents, brothers, sisters, nephews, aunts, uncles, and cousins. They all made up a very close-knit family. When I was 7 months old, my father introduced me to my foster mom. Due to my foster mom's insecurities and my father's desire to forget the plans he had made with my mom, contact with my mother's biological side was limited to meeting once a year. My foster mom didn't want to share the role of mother. She knew my family wanted to talk about my mom in my presence. She wanted me to know she existed, but she didn't want to feel any less of a real mom. My father never reconciled the loss of my mom. He buried the past to deal with the pain. Sometimes it's hard for him to look at me. I remind him too much of my mom and her family, so he can never completely escape from the past, no matter how hard he tries. I'm not quite sure why their decision didn't put me first, but they didn't. My childhood was happy for the most part, but there were times when I longed to get to know my family and my mom better. I was not accepted by my mom's family. It was always painful. Then I started communicating more with my family. It started with regular text messages and calls through Zoom. Later, I convinced my dad to let me spend weekends with them. This decision didn't please my dad and foster mom. It also confused my siblings. I enjoyed getting to know them, and they enjoyed getting to know me. Meeting only once a year wasn't enough for my grandparents, so it was important for them to see me more often. My parents began to express their dissatisfaction with this extra contact. My dad said it hurt him, and my mom felt less important because I was pursuing a relationship with a mom I didn't remember. A few weeks ago, they told me that I should consider their feelings and those of my foster mom. I asked them how they would feel if they were in my mom's or her family's shoes, if they had passed away when their child was an infant and were wiped out by their spouse and new spouse. I asked if they would have been okay if my siblings or I had passed away with a newborn and they never became a real part of their lives. They refused to answer. I told them I wouldn't talk to them until they gave me an answer because it was completely unfair to me. My parents were angry about it. My siblings asked me why I was making such a big deal about it. I asked the question, if we passed away and never saw their only child, would they be okay with that? This question helped them realize that my parents don't like it when I'm quiet. However, all they want to talk about is this topic, and they won't give me an answer either. You're not an idiot. You have every right to maintain a relationship with your birth mom's family. To ignore it is cruel to you and your maternal family. Your younger siblings seem to act more mature than your father or adoptive mom. They don't answer your questions because they probably have the same feelings you do. Regardless, they want you to stay out of touch with your mother's family because it threatens the new family they created. That doesn't sound healthy. Your father continues to dismiss these issues, and it's hurting you. It's probably not fun for him, knowing that sometimes it's hard for him to look at you because you remind him of something painful. It's clearly not your fault. It sounds like your dad would benefit from some therapy to deal with these underlying emotions. I realize it's questionable whether you or anyone else can convince him to try therapy. Your stepmother seems afraid of losing you. You're not an idiot at all, and at your age you don't need to appease adults. But here you are. I wonder if there might be more to this story than they're telling. Grief does strange things to people, but it sounds like your dad was hiding from your mom's family. Maybe they didn't think he could take care of a child and forced him to give you to them. Next story. Ashley, a 26-year-old female, and I, a 28-year-old male, had been together for over a year. Overall, our relationship was going well until our one-year anniversary came around. At this time, I began to notice strange things. Messages from friends and family were disappearing. Discussed invitations to meetings never reached me. At first, I thought I was losing my mind. The texts on my phone seemed to make no sense. One day, I caught Ashley deleting a text from my cousin. It really pissed me off, especially because the message was about an important event, a surprise birthday party for my 80-year-old grandmother. That's when I first saw the other side of Ashley. She was screaming, demanding to know why I was planning something without her. It wasn't like that, though. Ashley was always invited and involved in the planning. It frustrated me that she tried to make me look guilty, even though I had repeatedly asked for her input on the party preparations. In the end, I apologized to her for her feelings and promised to involve her even more in our plans. Our family and friends live far away from each other. My family is 16 hours away, so any get-togethers require careful planning. I began to notice that every time we planned time with family or friends, Ashley would unexpectedly need my help at the last minute. The situation was different when we spent time with her friends or family. I would bring it up, but she would reassure me that it was just a coincidence. My phone would often end up on silent mode, though I'm sure I didn't switch it myself. She denied her involvement in this. The situation worsened 4 days ago. My grandmother became ill and passed away in the hospital 2 days later. I haven't gotten any messages or calls from my loved ones. It turned out that Ashley had blocked everyone from family to friends on my phone. I didn't pay much attention to it at first, thinking the phone just wasn't ringing. Adult life is full of worries, and I didn't pay much attention to it. This continued until I ran into an old friend at the grocery store. She expressed her condolences to me about my grandmother's passing. I asked what she was talking about. She told me about my grandmother. At that moment, I pulled out my phone and saw that my contacts were blocked. Dropping everything, I ran home to get my car. After all, it was a 16-hour drive to my family in another state. When I returned, Ashley greeted me with a smile as if nothing had happened. I couldn't help myself, and I flared up. I questioned why she blocked all the people important to me, yelling at her since I had gotten the news of my grandmother's death from a casual acquaintance. Ashley apologized, saying she did it for us, so that friends and family wouldn't stop us from being together. I was outraged. I demanded that she leave my house. She left, and I was left with the feeling that I had lost my last moments with my grandmother, a woman who had raised me and taught me a lot. Ashley left the house 10 minutes later, and I lost my temper. I don't remember if I screamed or cried, but I destroyed my house in a fit of rage. All I remember is uncontrollable rage. Halfway to my grandparents' house, I don't even remember. I am now at my grandparents' house where funeral preparations are underway. The family was shocked, asking where I was and why I wasn't answering my cell phone. I told them what had happened, and while they seemed to believe me, you could read the disappointment in their looks. A cousin said my grandmother had asked about me the day before she died. A mutual friend of ours had gotten the truth from Ashley about what had happened. Everyone agreed that what she did was wrong, and I was right to break up with her. However, I went too far by threatening her with physical pain. I recognized that my actions were not the best. I am ashamed of my behavior. It is impossible to describe in words the feelings of anger, rage, and betrayal I felt. Edited. The last communication between me, my friend, and my family was 6 days ago. We haven't communicated since. Life is busy for everyone. No one from my state has come to see if I'm okay or come to pick me up. The doctors informed my family that my grandmother didn't have much time left. They all wanted to be there for her and my grandfather. Next month was to be their 65th anniversary together. Grandpa took those days very hard. He stopped eating and didn't sleep for 2 days. I was effectively put on the back burner. I'm not mad at them because I would have done the same thing myself. You are not an idiot. My condolences on your loss. Only time will help at a time like this. Rely on your family and friends. It's easy for people to judge and say, you overreacted. You really didn't need to do that to her. But they don't understand your situation. Anyone could have lost their temper. You didn't touch her. You only used words. It was the only way available to you at that moment to convey the seriousness of your feelings and how important it was for her to leave. Now set a password on your phone. Each partner should have their own phone, and it should only be accessed with your consent. This is also important for overall safety. You should change the locks and make sure she doesn't have access to your accounts. If she spent enough time on your phone to read and delete texts, block calls, and change settings, who knows what else she might have done. It's sad, though, that your ex's threat was in response to her own actions. She brought this on herself through her own evil and accumulated manipulation. It sounds like she really overstepped her bounds. Damn it, buddy, seriously, don't go back to this town. Better yet, hire a company to pack up all your stuff and ship it anywhere. Make sure you shake all the boxes before you open them to make sure she's not hiding in one of them. Your ex is a manipulative monster who has isolated you from your support network. This is typical abusive behavior. You did nothing wrong here, and I'm sorry about your grandmother. If I were you, I'd block her, and if anyone asks why, just say, "Oh, I did it for us." Good luck, man. Now I want to tell a different story. I have a son. He is 24 years old. He hasn't achieved much in his entire life. He never went to college. Now he works in a restaurant making minimum wage. His place of residence is a small studio he shares with friends. Their main occupation is video games. My son has no clear plans for his future. Unlike him, my niece recently celebrated her 18th birthday. She is planning to enroll in a prestigious college. She also has a part-time job. In her spare time, she helps other children. My niece intends to move out of her parents' house after graduation, when she has enough money to rent an apartment and live with roommates. I truly admire her intelligence and work ethic. For my niece's birthday, my brother decided to buy her a car. He asked me to help financially. I agreed and invested $3,000 in the purchase. My brother purchased the car and gave it to my niece as a birthday present from both of us. This decision displeased my son. He took offense at me, stating that I had acted unreasonably. My son believes that this money should have been given to him to help him buy a car. He is now convinced that I made a mistake in choosing to help my niece over him. Your son, who seems to expect you to spend your money on him, makes me think that you may not have paid enough attention to his education, especially since he had no plans to go to college. This might explain your disappointment when you easily bought a car for your niece in front of your son. It seems to me that the high expectations you place on your son to earn more than minimum wage without any degree are not matched by your support for getting the education he needs. Your words about your son in your post reflect considerable hostility because of his failure to meet these difficult standards. It is safe to assume that your son feels left out, seeing that you would rather invest in your niece's future than his own. You have every right to decide how to manage your funds, including buying a car. However, your categorical opinion of your son based solely on the fact that he did not go to college like your niece seems unfair. My next story. My son is 25 years old. About a year ago, he started dating a girl named Lexi. A year and a half ago, she moved to live a few hours away from us, but they continue to see each other often. I recently met her in person. Although I don't know much about her, it's noticeable that she makes my son happy and has common sense, which is important to me. Last Friday, we organized a barbecue that was attended by about 25 or 30 people, mostly our friends and family. My son asked if he could bring Lexi. I replied that of course, no problem. The menu consisted of hamburgers, ribs, wings, and a few meatless entrees. However, my son did not mention to me or anyone else involved in preparing the meal that Lexi has a special diet. She is Catholic and doesn't eat meat on Fridays. Plus, she has an eating disorder that limits her food choices to make her feel good. Lexi was nice and I enjoyed her company. However, I hated to see her sitting there without food. When I asked if she had eaten beforehand, she said that she had and that she wasn't hungry. I asked my son why they went to eat before the barbecue, and he said they came straight from her house. I then turned to Lexi to ask if she liked the food. She explained why she couldn't eat meat and why she wouldn't eat any of the food offered since my son hadn't said anything beforehand. I personally asked Lexi if there was anything I could do or donate for her, or maybe we could go out for food. She asked if I had any fruit, so she had a fruit salad. When things settled down, my son came up to me and told me that I had embarrassed Lexi and shouldn't have called attention to it. I told him that I should have shown more care and thought about her features beforehand. After all, if we had known she couldn't consume what we were cooking, we would have had no trouble making a simple salad or buying fruit. That way, Lexi could at least choose what she wanted to eat instead of sitting around hungry. If we had known this ahead of time, I wouldn't have had to ask my son. He left in annoyance to drive Lexi home. He still insists that I gave a bad impression and that it's okay if she didn't eat anything. Allegedly, I made her anxiety worse, but that's his opinion and I'm not sure I can believe him. Could I have done anything differently? It's not your fault. His decision to let her starve was a mistake. She asked for fruit salad and found her own way out of the situation. He's trying to avoid responsibility because he wasn't considerate or sensitive enough to offer something his girlfriend could have eaten. He tries to appear indifferent and defends his girlfriend's honor, hoping it will hide his shortcomings. His behaviors are red flags. How can he care about her if he took her to a barbecue where she can't eat meat? A simple phone call to discuss the menu and they could have enjoyed some delicious grilled fish. It would also be enjoyed by the other guests and Lexi wouldn't feel isolated. Or they could have brought their own food at the last minute. Your son made a mistake and has room to grow. I hope Lexi rethinks her relationship with someone who cares so little for her that he allowed her starvation and then blames you for solving the problem he created. You have done so much more than your son and been a great hostess. He clearly still has a lot to learn, and at his age of 25, it is obvious.